Yes, folks, it's Tales from the Jails with John G. Sutton. That's me, by the way. And I'm talking today about recruitment to His Majesty's Prison Service and the police. Chief Constable is stating at the moment that it's impossible to recruit the right calibre of police because the pay is insufficient, and that he requires a proper pay rise for all constables, so that this chief constable says he can recruit to the police. If he can't recruit to the police, they're having even more difficulties in the prison service. I speak to serving prison officers, and one was telling me that what's happening at the moment is they are recruiting people, but they recruit them locally. They don't interview them on a face-to-face basis with a national recruitment board like they did when I was there. I mean, I'm not saying it was perfect, it obviously wasn't, but it was difficult to get into the prison service because it was a career with a proper pension at the end. Today, it seems not to be. I mean, I've talked to people who have been medically retired from the prisons due to stress and injuries sustained whilst on duty, and they have come out without a pension, or they will not get their pension until they reach pensionable age, which is 67, I believe. And today you can work in the prisons until you're 67. When I was joined in January 1975, the retirement age was 55. So you could retire at 55 and take a pension from the Home Office. But obviously, you wouldn't get your old age pension. That was 65. But you could retire and take your pension from the prison service at the age of 55. The problem that I've been told today is that people are coming straight off civvy street, straight off out of the towns and the council estates or wherever they're recruited from, going into the prisons. They've never seen anything like it. Because don't forget, these prisons the main part of the prisons are in places like Strangeways, Wandsworth, Armley Jail. I mean, Armley Jail's over 200 years old. Yeah, and a lot of these prisons are Victorian. So you've got people from today walking into the prisons as prison officers or trainee prison officers, taking one look at these antiquated systems and thinking, I'm not staying here. I mean, if you've never actually walked round the landings of a Victorian jail like Strangeways or Walton or Wandsworth or Pentonville or the Scrubs, if you've never done that, you're in for a shock when you actually do, because it looks like a scene from some gothic horror movie. It's thick brick walls, great big iron bars, gates that bang and clang. It's medieval, really, in a way, and that's what it's based on. And you've still got things like the block at Strangeways, which contains what's known as silent cells. These are cells that are encased within, so there's two doors to get into the cell. There's a door on the outside, you go in, there's a small space, and there's another door, and that's the door into the cell. They call those the silent cells. And why do they call them the silent cells? I'll tell you why they call them the silent cells, because it doesn't matter how much you scream, nobody is going to hear you. And even if they do hear you, which is unlikely, they couldn't give a flying one, because that's the block at Strangeways. You can imagine taking somebody who's reasonably educated, giving them a uniform, a hat and a big stick, set of keys, turning them out onto the landings in Strangeways. They'd be horrified. Absolutely mortified, and they're not staying. What they're doing is they're walking in, taking a look. I mean, I've had reports from staff around the country who are telling me that they've recruited people and they've lasted a couple of days and just don't go back. Also spoke to staff who are saying that they've worked in these prisons and that they've been doing 60 or 70 hours a week because they're so short-staffed. Charlie Taylor, who is the head of the prisons through the Ministry of Justice, he's saying that they can't undertake any rehabilitation in these prisons because they haven't got the staff to do it, and all that they can do is lock and unlock them. What kind of a system are we running then? So there has to be an answer to this. I mean, we've got this Chief Constable saying that he believes that offering them maybe a £10,000 a year increase in pay would at least help to recruit the correct calibre, and perhaps reinstating the pension so that people who've got something to work for makes it worth staying on. Are you with me? I mean, if at the end of it you're going to get something and nothing as your pension, and your wage is less than that of a cashier at Tesco's, you're not going to stay, are you? You're going to have a look round and get yourself a job that doesn't involve you rolling round on the floor with a couple of big 16-stone guys who are trying to rub your nose in it. Yeah, you're gonna get a job where you don't have to work Christmas Day, Christmas Eve, Christmas night, Boxing Day, all the way through New Year's Day, weekends, nights. You don't have to do that if you're working on the store at Tesco's, do you? Or if you're a car park attendant. So who wants to do the job? Well, certain people want to do the job, and that's why we're getting so many people locked up, because the wages, it just isn't sufficient. According to this Chief Constable, serving officers in his force are having to go to food banks. How disgraceful is that? My father was in the police. I think he joined about 1953. Yeah, and was serving as a police constable in Prestwich in Greater Manchester, just outside Manchester. Yeah, but he looked upon it as a career, and he did. He stayed in it, and he became a detective inspector, which was a career for him. And people, you weren't looking to go and do anything else, you were looking to progress in the police, but not now. People are going in there as a job and abusing it. And this is one reason, the same thing with the prisons, that people are going into the prisons and accepting bribes from inmates. I have people who've been speaking to me who are working in the prisons say you get an average between £150 and £500 a package to take stuff in. It's a risk, and you get imprisoned. At one particular prison, I think it's HMP Berwyn, there's been 18 female members of staff imprisoned over the last few years. 18. It's just beggars belief. It's the way it's gone. So what are they going to do about it? It needs somebody to sit down and discuss this matter seriously. For a start off, I don't believe that locking people up for not paying television licences is an answer. I don't believe that locking people up for non-payment of fines is the answer. They've got to stop that. It's nonsense. It doesn't punish people. I mean, and it costs the country a fortune. It must cost £1,000 a week to keep somebody in places like Strangeways and Walton Jail. They're also, all this ancient estate is riddled with rats and vermin. So it's time for somebody to start thinking about this. And I believe what they should do is, if you're going to send somebody to imprisonment, that's all right. Imprison them in their own home. Tag them. I mean, you've got things like these echo devices, yeah, that are littered around the house. I've got them. They can listen in. They do listen in. And you can be wired up to that. I mean, the technology's there. I don't know why they don't imprison people in their own homes. And they're not allowed out of their own homes, or they're allowed out between certain times, and then within a restricted distance. But nobody's thinking, are they? They're just thinking, oh, well, we'll make it so that people don't want to be in prison. Of course they don't want to be imprisoned. And people don't want to be imprisoned in their own homes either, because they're just not free, and it's the loss of freedom that is the punishment. Certainly no point in putting people in there and feeding them porridge and getting people abusing them. No. They're not thinking straight, is my opinion. And as for recruiting staff to the prison system and the police, it's going to get more and more difficult as people, general people, realise it just ain't worth it, risking your life. That's the song, dear. Yep, Larry's up and running, goats under his arm, heading for the hills, yeah. Paula's there. She's dipping her feet in Loch Lomond, yeah. You take the high road and I'll take the low road, and I'll be in Scotland. Anyway, something like that, isn't it? Yeah, Paula. Catherine, thank you for your kind comments. You asked me what happened to Teddy Waller. I was a bad boy at the time. He had his punishment and he was allowed back in. Teddy Waller's a little teddy bear that I punished when I was 9 years old, because it was cheeky bear, you see. It's in my book, Screwed Up, which is available on Amazon, along with my HMP Manchester book. Last one, I'm going to read you a poem now. It's slightly in the Lancashire vernacular. It's about my friend who didn't want to live in Wigan. He wanted to move out. And this is his poem. It's called Wigan Refugee. I was living in Wigan up from the cut. Every time the wind blew the doors bang shut. The plumbing was knackered, the kitchen was a bin, the windows were leaking and the rain poured in. I couldn't really fettle it, no good at DIY, too busy watching telly to give it a try. The wife said, sell the bastard. Well, it's easier said than done. We put it on the market, no bugger come. 12 months later, waiting to flit, stuck in stinky Wigan up from the pit. A stranger came to view it, I shook him by the hand, pointed to the pitscape, said, ain't it ruddy grand? Right handy for swimming, just a stone's throw from the cut. The silly sod bought it, we were glad to get shut. So now we live in posh part. We flitted out to Lee. Bollocks to George Orwell, I'm a Wigan refugee. That's Wigan Refugee from my book, Flowers and Collected Poems by John G. Sutton. I'm a poet, you see. Larry needs to publish his poems. Come on, Larry, get on with it, lad. Hope you've enjoyed that. Tales from the Jails. And you've all bought a copy of my book. Thanks.